Good evening, afternoon or morning. Movie Cat is at the microphone and today I will tell you about a comedy detective murder mystery.
Shoot at him! Those were warning shots, honey!
Nick Spitz is an NYPD officer and his wife Audrey Spitz is a hairdresser, an ordinary couple who have lived together for many years, where each spouse tolerates the other one with great difficulty, but cannot live without. Nick is trying to become a detective, but has already failed 3 exams. He is afraid to admit it to his wife, so he decides to lie that he already became a detective. Today is their wedding anniversary and thrifty Nick buys his wife a $50 Amazon gift card. Audrey has been dreaming of visiting Europe for many years, because Nick promised her this on their wedding. After a 15th wedding anniversary dinner, Audrey confronts Nick about the trip to Europe that never happened. Then Nick, hiding an Amazon gift card behind his back, bluffs that he has already bought them tickets to France. Nick then buys economy class air tickets and the cheapest bus tour across South Europe. During a long flight, Audrey accidentally enters first class and meets a young Englishman, Viscount Charles Cavendish. A man flies to the wedding party of his incredibly wealthy uncle, Malcolm Quince, and Japanese fashion model Susie Nakamura. Cavendish hates his uncle because the old man took Susie away from him. Having met Nick, Cavendish invites couple to join him on his uncle's yacht. After seeing how crowded and noisy their bus tour will be, Nick agrees. On the yacht's board, Nick and Audrey meet a group of guests who have known each other for a very long time. Cavendish's ex-fiancée and Quince's current wife, Japanese model Susie Nakamura, the only son of Quince, Toby, and his friend, the famous actress Grace Ballard, Quince's old friend, Colonel Ulenga, and Colonel's bodyguard Sergei, Maharaja from Mumbai, and Juan, Formula One driver in the Quince's team. Later than everyone else, already on the move catching up his yacht with a helicopter, the billionaire himself, Malcolm Quince, arrives. Quince is a little surprised to see Cavendish's unfamiliar guests. However, assuming that the nephew just wants to annoy him by inviting poorly dressed people with no good manners, Quince stops paying attention to the Americans. In the evening before dinner, behind the closed doors, Quince publicly announces that he has gathered everyone on the yacht in order to sign a new will in their presence, according to which none of them will receive anything, since they are all parasites and have achieved their success solely thanks to his financing. And they all do not care about the old man Quince himself. The only interest is in his money. The only heir will be his new wife Susie. Only Susie sincerely loves him. Frustrated, Grace runs out of the cabin. Quince is leaning over the will with a fountain pen, but before he can sign, the lights suddenly go out. Seconds later, the lights turn back on, and everyone present sees a dead Quince, stabbed to the death with his own rare dagger. Nick, who is declared as a detective by his wife, is forced to take the initiative. He orders the guests not to touch anything and leave the cabin, and the captain must lock it up until the Interpol representatives enter in Monte Carlo. Later in the night, the guests find Toby, Quince's only son, dead after an apparent suicide. Upon arriving in Monte Carlo, the guests are interrogated by Inspector Laurent Delacroix, who eventually concludes that Nick and Audrey are the prime suspects because all the other guests have unanimously pointed them out. Inspector, while he has no direct evidence, takes the passports from the Spitzes and sends them to a hotel under house arrest. Nick and Audrey escape from the hotel and go to the Monaco Grand Prix where Juan is taking part. The rest of the guests came to support him. Nick and Audrey start questioning the guests. Audrey learns from Colonel Ulenga that under French inheritance law, all property is divided equally between the children, regardless of what the will says, so it was not very profitable for the relatives to kill Quince. Maharaja tells Nick that Juan, a racing driver, has a father who was a driver at Quince's team. However, he was in an accident and lost both of his legs due to the fact that Quince skimped on safety. The motive for the murder may not be self-interest, but revenge. That night, unexpectedly, Spitz are invited by Sergei, the bodyguard of Colonel Ulenga, to his room. Sergei tells a story. Once upon a time, many years ago, Colonel Ulenga received a severe wound while saving the life of Malcolm Quince. The colonel lost an eye and fell into a coma. After 10 months, the colonel came out of a coma and found out that Quince had married his fiancée. Soon she became pregnant by Quince, but died during childbirth along with the child. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door. Spitzes hide in the wardrobe. and when they come out, they find Sergei has been shot through the front door. Fleeing from the killer, the Spitz bravely climb out of the hotel window and walk along the ledge high above the ground. First, they see through the window how the colonel brushes his teeth for the night in his room, and then, climbing through the open window into the next room and hiding under the bed, they hear Maharaja and Grace kissing above them. All this practically eliminates the possibility that Sergei was shot by one of them. While fleeing, the couple hear on the TV news that Delacroix has issued a warrant for their arrest. Inspector also emphasized with particular importance that Nick is a liar. He deceives everyone that he is a detective. Audrey is furious to learn that Nick is not really a detective. Nick replies, anyway, he is still a policeman, which means that he will make decisions about what to do further, but not a hairdresser. In anger, Audrey leaves and, having accidentally met Cavendish around the corner, leaves with him. Cavendish orders the driver to leave France and drive to Italy. On Lake Como, Nick follows Susie. She heads to Lake Como and enters the library there. Unexpectedly, Nick runs into Audrey there, as Cavendish has also entered the same building, and Audrey is tired of waiting for him in the car. Spitzes come to the conclusion that Cavendish and Susie are still in love with each other and apparently killed the old man to get his money. Suddenly, in the hall of the library, an unknown person in a raincoat and a mask opens fire on the Spitzes. Nick and Audrey knock over bookcases on him and run out into the street, where they unexpectedly encounter the racer Juan. Then they meet an armed Susie and enter into an argument with her, during which a poisonous arrow is stuck in her throat, fired by the same masked unknown. Nick is the worst shooter in the NYPD, so he misses a shot with a pistol, but when he throws a plate, it hits the stranger hard in the forehead. Nick and Audrey go to the Quincy's mansion to blame Cavendish for the murders, but they find him dead with signs of poisoning. Spitzes call Delacroix and remaining guests, Colonel Ulenga, actress Grace, Maharaja and racing driver Juan. Each of the survivors, at first glance, has an alibi, instantly analyzing all the available information. Nick and Audrey simultaneously come to the conclusion that the killer is Grace. She was in collusion with Toby. She ran out of the cabin, turned off the light so that Toby could stab his own father. Later at night, she shot her accomplice. In response to the accusation, Grace reveals that she is the same Quincy's child who supposedly died in childbirth. Quince wanted a boy, so he simply refused a girl. Therefore, Grace believes his money rightfully belongs to her. The fact she is a killer, Grace denies. For Audrey, a professional hairdresser, it seems strange that Grace put on a hat on a fresh hairstyle. Inspector rips off the hat and under it is found a wound from a plate thrown by Nick. It turns out that day masked she attacked the Spitzes and Susie killed by accident. Grace takes Audrey hostage, but a bad shooter Nick snatches a revolver from the holster on the colonel's belt standing next to him and hits the killer's right shoulder with the first shot. A minute later, in secret, he confesses to his wife. He was aiming at the leg. Suddenly, surprised Maharaja tells Nick and Audrey that Grace can be really involved in the death of Quince, Toby, Susie and Cavendish, but she could not kill Sergei. Before going up to the room, Maharaja and Grace spent a whole hour together in the bar. Therefore, Grace had an accomplice. So, only racing driver Juan can be the second killer. Realizing that he was blamed, Juan takes Inspector Delacroix hostage and leaves in one of the police cars. Spitzes resolutely steal a luxurious Ferrari standing next to them and rush after Juan. Having hurriedly jumped into the car, they discover the car is right-hand drive, so the driver is not Nick, but Audrey, and there is no time to change seats. In a long chase, Juan crashes into a pole. Having got out of the wreckage on the road, Juan takes aim at Spitzes, but then he is hit by a tourist bus, the one Nick and Audrey were originally supposed to go on tour in. Delacroix thanks Spitz's couple and promises Interpol and the French police will report to New York about Nick's outstanding role in this investigation and will do everything to help him get promoted and become a detective upon his return. Nick invites Delacroix to visit New York someday, where he will gladly pin a murder on a Frenchman. Nick and Audrey continue their vacation in the dining car of the legendary Orient Express, tickets for which were presented to them by Interpol. Thanks for watching, press hearts, write any comment for the development of the channel, and if you still don't understand why Cavendish called Spitzes to the yacht, me too, subscribe in solidarity.